This week on the Orange Box podcast, we talk about a new Darksiders game in development, the strong possibility of Final Fantasy XVI coming to PC very soon, Half-Life 3 being confirmed, and more. All of this tonight, but first, on to that beautiful Bean intro. Welcome to the place where PC and console gaming talk combine. This is the Orange Box Podcast, episode 44. I am your host, the man who can yell as his whispers and uses thermal detonators as propulsion devices, Nathan, also known as the Frozen Gamer 87. And joining me as always, the man who could take a direct close-range blaster shot to the head and survive, but would die if a 90-pound woman gave him a 1-2 punch, Justin, better known as I Am Zaracon. How you doing today? How's your week been?
This past week has been, I would say, a bit more laid back than the previous weeks. I mean, still trying to get my situation with internet worked out, but I haven't been as frantic as I was before trying to get some other stuff done. So that gave me more time to relax, actually gave me a chance to play some games this week. Which of course I'll talk about later, but yeah, it's definitely been pretty good. Even had my nephew come over because he was very upset that I was leaving last week, and so he wanted to come with me. So I was like, all right, you can come, and so he spent the night with us, and
Nice.
He enjoyed it. He had some snacks. He played some games too, so it was a good time.
Very cool. Well, my week wasn't too bad because I was actually ahead of schedule on stuff for, some of the stuff anyway. For a change, I actually had more free time than usual. I didn't end up recording any cooking videos this week, mostly just because timing didn't really work out for anything, so I ended up not putting anything up for that this week. But I do have at least one recipe that I'll be recording this week, and hopefully I'll have a chance to record multiple this weekend, but we'll just kind of see how that goes. But yeah, I can't really think of anything altogether unusual or exciting that's happened. It's just been pretty much more of a normal week for me compared to previous weeks. So yeah, that's that.
Yeah, I'm definitely certain that you have more. I guess it's more of a relief since you don't have to lead praise and worship at your church now, right, since July's over.
Yeah, it's good to have the break. I enjoyed doing it. It was just one more thing being added to my plate, and after the first week, it wasn't too bad for the most part. Especially the third and fourth week, I felt like we were well oiled enough to where it wasn't much of a problem. And I mean, it's something that I did for 5 years before at a church I was at before, so it wasn't like I couldn't do it. It's just the muscle hadn't been exercised as much. I've done it maybe 3-4 times since we started this church, and at least before this, and before that, I hadn't done it since 2017, so it had been a while. But anyway, what have you been playing this past week?
All right, so one of the things I started playing was Halls of Torment, just because I wanted to play something just to do something that was relaxing, and so I didn't really play it with too much of a goal in mind, so I was just playing it. But did some stuff that counted towards achievements, and so that was pretty much good. And also, I'm still trying to figure out how to get this one character to have a better run, because he's just so weak that unless you really level him up and are skilled enough to maneuver him around, he just goes down easily, which is a bit of a shame. But he can be a very good powerhouse once he gets high enough in level. But that was that with that game. The game I was playing with my nephew, was Super Smash Brothers, and because it was just him and not my niece playing at the time, it was easier to sort of like watch him, because something that did, and also friends of mine did with our younger siblings when they want to play, is we set them as the CPU, and said like, that's you moving around. But it seems like this generation's just too smart for that now. So I just let him give him the controller and let him do whatever he wants. Granted, this obviously isn't him as the CPU I'm playing right now, but he definitely had a good time playing, though. He's getting better at identifying characters in Smash Brothers outside of Mario characters and like a couple Pokemon characters. So he's starting to recognize other characters, which is easier for him to, like, if he says, I want to be this character, it's very useful for me instead of like having to ask who is who. And the fact that Ultimate has over 100 characters, it just makes it worse. But it was good just getting back to also playing that game. It's been a while since I've touched Smash. But primarily though, I've been playing is more Kingdom Hearts HD Final Mix, and I'm both happy and upset over what happened this week. So because I didn't have internet, I was playing it offline, and I've been trying to get through the final boss with Ansem, and because he's been very aggravating, just because he has one attack that really messes me up, and eventually I can get to sort of the final phase where he's like in that giant heartless ship thing, but the problem is I kept dying in the first phase of that fight. But then I thought about it. I was like, all right, I should grind, I should level up some more, and also I just looked online. I said, let me see how I can boost my arrow magic, because I just had the base form, and initially people said you shouldn't go and try to you should skip Olympus Coliseum. I went there one time because someone said you actually should go there because that's the way you learn Thunder, and Thunder's good for crowd control. So I initially went there, but then I saw someone say, or at least I looked up, said you get the second level of arrow if you do the Hades or the Hercules Cup. And I was like, well, since I have time, since I still have about like 7 hours before I lose the speed run achievement, I said I'll go ahead, do the Hercules Cup, get Aurora, and then I should be able to be better. And it's great because that level of magic does protect you more, but it also deals damage when enemies touch you. So that was great. So I went through, it took me a couple times, but I finally beat Ansem. Here's the part that really upset me though. The game does not register any achievements if you're playing in offline mode. So once I finished the fight and once I got through all the credits, the achievement did not unlock. And I thought, okay, let me just quickly go. Maybe if I connect to the internet, maybe it's a thing where then it'll unlock once I connect to the internet and, turn the game on and whatnot. It did not unlock. So even though I beat the boss fight, which took me a lot of time because of the fact that I'm not optimized to actually fight any high level characters or bosses, I have to go through that all over again in order to actually get the achievement to unlock, which frustrated me to no end because it took me a lot of time to get to that point. I mean, if I was able to use any other Keyblade, if I was able to actually change my equipment, that would be one thing. I would be able to do that easily because I have decent equipment now that I've collected in different Keyblades that I can use. I just can't use them for the achievements. So I'm just like, oh, I got to do that all over again. So I was very salty at that point, but I'll go back and I'll have to definitely wait whenever I actually am certain that I have a stable internet connection, and then go through all that, and hopefully it won't be a problem. But yeah, that's what I've been playing this week.
Yeah, that's a shame. I mean, worst case scenario, you could always just set up a mobile hotspot on your phone and connect that way.
That is true. That's something I didn't think about at the time.
Yeah. Either way, more power to you, man. You're going through that extra effort. But I've been there with that kind of stuff before. And then I've had other times where it's like, I definitely got achievements, or I would have gotten them, but for some reason they didn't pop because of glitch. And it's like, especially when it's like a hard achievement, that it's frustrating. I mean, like, in particular, there's This one's kind of mixed. So, did you ever play Snake Pass when that came out?
I might have played that on the Switch. I have it on
Okay.
Steam, but I haven't touched that.
Okay.
There.
So, I played it completely on Switch, 100% in it, minus like additional, speed run or whatever bonus achievements, but I got all collectibles and all the levels, did all that. And I eventually got it on Steam and did the same thing. Got 100% all collectibles. And I decided I wanted to start working towards getting every achievement because I really love that game. I think it's fantastic. But there's like a few achievements specifically tied to like completing all levels and stuff like that never popped. And eventually I want to go back to it and just kind of work on it some more because like there's some achievements related to getting through every level without falling. And the way it works is it's not like, oh, you have to go through every single level back to back. You can't fall at all. It's more like if you fall during a level, you have to restart it in order to be able for it to count. So, I could just see if that didn't pop after I completed a level without falling, especially one of the like later levels that's really difficult because of you're like over basically an abyss, and if you fall off, it's just like you're over an abyss, and then you have to deal with wind and just everything else. It's like I don't like that, but anyway, none of that really matters. As far as what I've been playing, so there's actually been quite a few things. Most of the things I played have just been like little snippets here and there. But I definitely got more game time this past week than I usually get. So I did play some more Ni no Kuni, and played that basically just on the Switch, or not on the Switch, on the Steam Deck. I do want to say one thing. This is just kind of a side note. I really hate the fact that with the Steam Deck recording, you cannot transfer clips that are over like 100 megabytes. So it basically has to be, it can be 1 minute or 100 megabytes. I think actually it can only be a maximum of a minute long. I hate the fact that there's no way to transfer longer clips, because there are a few clips that it's like, hey, I recorded a bunch of gameplay. I would love to be able to save that so that I could use it for videos, for the podcast, things like that, but I can't. So, anyway, that being said, the gameplay in this clip is specifically from the Steam Deck, which is like, I had to do under a minute in order to get it to actually be able to be transferred, because there doesn't appear to be any other way to do it. And I just think that sucks. But anyway, so yeah, I played a bit of that. Not very much, maybe like a couple hours. Made a little bit of progress, but nothing significant. Enjoy it overall. Just, I wanted to play a bunch of different things, and I had to choose what to play, so I decided to try out different stuff. So played some more Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, and the last thing I did was beating Zangetsu. I think that's his name. Or as I like to call him, Snakegetsu, because he's voiced by David Hayter. Which, it's funny because like I encountered him. I've encountered him I think 3 times total. The first time you fight him, and the second time he doesn't do anything to you. You just talk to him briefly. And with that second time that I encountered him, I'm like, his voice kind of sounds like David Hayter. And then I looked it up, and sure enough, that's exactly who it is. So yes, Snakegetsu. But then I, encountered him this third time and beat him. Of course, I have the invert ability now, so I can do the inverted castle, which I'm actually kind of glad that it's not a completely separate castle, and that it's really just being able to invert yourself so you can get to areas you couldn't previously access. But yeah, I'm a little bit stuck at the moment, but mostly just because I haven't tried looking up how to figure out where to go next. Since I beat him, and there's an optional boss that you can face. let's see, the woodcutter, or the, oh god, what's his name? It's the carpenter, I think is what it is.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And I mean, he's a pain in the butt. I've only tried a couple times and I just haven't had much success. I think I just need to like watch someone do it so that I get a better idea of how to handle all of his attacks. But yeah, I couldn't get past him, and I wasn't really sure where to go next. Like I've explored all the areas I can think to explore in terms of making use of the invert ability, but I haven't really found anything that's, or I mean, I haven't found anything more than that. Like, you know, I got to the, oh, what is the name of that place? Whatever the place is where you fight Zangetsu, where it's like a Oriental Garden or something like that. I can't remember what it's called. It was something like that. Some name like that at the place. Obviously, you know what I'm talking about, but yeah, I'm just not quite sure where to go next, so I probably just need to look it up. I know one thing, though. So, when I first got the invert ability, one of the first places I went with it was the castle you fight the twin dragons. And I, you know, invert myself because I know that there's, like, this area up near the top where I couldn't get to it before, and I knew that the invert ability would make it possible for me to get there. I found, like, one or two chests, but I didn't find the chest that ultimately I would end up actually needing. It's like, okay, I'll explore it up there. I'm going all over the place, trying to figure out where to go. I'm coming across that one area where there's like hallways of spikes, and I'm thinking, okay, well, it seems like there has to be some type of armor thing, because, of course, in Symphony of the Night, you have the armor that lets you break up the spikes as you walk through them. So I figured there had to be something like that. Ended up, eventually, I mean, I spent probably 2-3 hours just looking around trying to figure out how to get where I needed to go, and then I finally looked it up and found out that there was indeed another piece of armor that was up in that castle that I missed, and so I got it and was able to proceed. But yeah, not much other thoughts on that. I definitely want to, you know, continue the game and finish it and everything. It's just a matter of figuring out where to go next, and then it should be pretty easy to continue. I think I'm at like probably around 80% on the map, give or take, maybe 85. I don't quite remember, but yeah, good chunk of the way through. So that's good stuff. But of course, after having played Borderlands 3 last week, I decided, you know, I'm kind of in the mood to play Borderlands 2, so I decided to jump into that for a bit, and I'm kind of like in between on how much I'm enjoying it when I played it, because on the one hand, like, the guns feel good and everything, but sometimes, similar to what happens with Destiny, sometimes it just gets feels a little too grindy, I guess. It's not as much fun. And it's not necessarily that like the gunplay is bad or anything like that. It's just occasionally I get annoyed at, like, maybe I don't have enough bullets, or you know, various other things. Sometimes it just feels like I'm running across the map most of the time. I still think the vehicles in that game control like garbage, because of the fact that you move forward. You have to press forward on the left stick in order to move forward, and then you steer with the right stick. And I mean, yes, I could get used to it if I keep working at it, but it's just something that I've never been real comfortable with, because, you know, most games you're using like the right triggers or whatever in order to accelerate and reverse, and it doesn't do that in Borderlands, so it's kind of annoying. What I will say, though, is that I think I might actually kind of like playing it better on Steam Deck than playing it on PC, because I played it on both. And the main reason I say that is because I think the gyro controls with the regular controller buttons actually just kind of works better. But it's also because of the fact that this is the kind of game where it's easier to just like pick up and play for a few minutes here and there if you have it on a portable device than it is if you're having to deal with with, starting and stopping all the time on PC. So I think ended up playing more on Steam Deck than I did on PC. But yeah, one thing that was interesting, and well, maybe not so much interesting, it was more just me not being smart. I was in the process of rendering the Borderlands 3 comparison, because I got that edited pretty reasonable time on Saturday, so I started working on the render for that, and then I decided, you know what, I want to try playing Borderlands 2 on PC, see what kind of performance I could get. And my performance was atrocious. It was like dropping down. I mean, on average, the best it was getting was like 60 frames per second, which isn't bad in general, but my computer's way too strong for it to be that bad. Especially because I'm getting 90 frames per second consistently on Steam Deck. And the settings are basically exactly the same between the two, so it's like I couldn't figure it out, so I'm starting to like lower settings and stuff. I'm still not getting the best performance. There like one or two spots where I was dropping down into the 30s, and I'm like, what is going on here? And then I realized, oh yeah, I'm rendering a video right now. That would be why. And so once I stopped rendering, I was getting, like anywhere from 90 to 180 frames per second. So it's like, okay, that makes more sense. I mean, like 90 was on the occasion it would drop low. It was typically more like 110 to 180 frames per second, somewhere around there. But yeah, so that's that. I did play a little more Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance, and I played that both on Steam Deck and on PC. Actually, I played it almost exclusively on Steam Deck. I only played on PC today so that I could record some gameplay. And mostly just because it was becoming a hassle trying to get the clips that I recorded on my Steam Deck condensed enough to where it would actually let me send it over. And so I finally decided, okay, I'll just boot it up on my PC, record for like 10 minutes and I'm good to go. But I came across a point in the story that it's definitely different from what it was in the original game. And I mean, there's been a couple of differences here and there, but they've all been kind of small. And it's like, okay, there's some additional stuff, but the overall story hasn't changed drastically. And then we got some things I'm like, this seems different than it was before. And I mean, of course, there is an additional character that's added in with the Vengeance storyline versus the original storyline. So it's like, okay, that seems a little bit different. And then one of the, like, maybe not major events, but one of the more major events of the early game was like drastically different. And I'm like, whoa, that took a completely different turn than what I was expecting. And it's like, am I just remembering this wrong? And it's like, no, I'm not remembering wrong. The original story went a different direction. So yeah, I didn't play as much as I would have liked, but it was really just because I was just floating between various games. Partially because things weren't fully grabbing me, but also just because I wanted to play a bunch of different stuff, and so I felt like I should just play a bunch of different stuff, so I did. But either way, it's good stuff. I did record the rest of my Outer Worlds gameplay for both the Switch and the Steam Deck. I was able to figure out, after I finished the Switch gameplay, how I wanted to condense it down, like what parts I want to leave in, what parts I want to cut out. I haven't done any editing yet, but because I just finished the recording last night. But it's like with the Switch, I ended up with almost 2 hours of recording. And with the Steam Deck, when I did it, I had about an hour and 15 minutes because I knew what stuff I could skip past, what stuff I didn't need to deal with. I made use of fast travel more, which definitely made a big difference. Higher frame rate makes a difference, but really that's not the biggest thing. I don't think that necessarily was the main issue. So one thing that I did do, though, is... the last time I had been playing a little bit on Steam Deck, just completely independently, continuing my save file, I had messed with the settings and basically gotten it to where I was doing, where I kept it at 40 frames per second. But I wanted to try to see if I could get it up to 60, because it just seemed like there has to be a way to get 60 frames per second on this, even if it's not 100% of the time. If it's most of the time, it can be really good. So I was able to mess around with settings. I was able to get a fairly consistent 60. Like, it's sometimes it'll drop in the open world, but inside buildings and everything, any of the various levels, dungeons, whatever, it pretty much stays at 60. Or at least like between 55 and 60. There might be a way to adjust things a little bit further to get a solid 60, but I'm already I have it rendering at 87% because I was trying to find that sweet spot between the quality of the render versus messing with all the other settings. And I mean, I think that 87% is pretty good. I probably, whenever I'm playing that game again, really diving into it, I'll probably try fiddling with the settings some more and see if I can get something that gives me just more of a locked 60. Even though I would imagine that probably, at least when it comes to the open world, it's going to be a lot harder to do. So I'm not sure about that, but either way, all the stuff's recorded. It's just a matter of editing, which will be a Saturday thing. But you may have seen me online a little bit. You may or may not have. I don't know if you've noticed that at all. But a game that I decided to jump back into for the first time since March, I believe, Dark Souls Remastered. So, before, the place I had been stuck was that I had gone down to Blighttown, taking the route that goes from, goes through the Valley of Drakes, and so taking the back way and I had gotten to a point before you get down to the actual bottom of Blighttown, where the Poison Lake is and everything. I had gotten stuck in this area where there's these guys that shoot poison blow darts, and then I was getting toxic, and I didn't have the right item in order to take care of that, so I had just been frustrated. I had stopped playing, and then I finally just decided, you know what, I'm going to give this another shot, because I've watched various videos, especially from Joe from Seattle, one of the salt farmers that I like to watch a lot, and he's been playing Dark Souls a bit, and so he'll have Dark Souls gameplay in his videos. I'm just like, man, I really want to go back to Dark Souls. I really want to give it another try. Just continue from where I left off, keep going, make some progress. And so I finally decided to just give it a shot. And sure enough, with the right motivation, I was able to get back into it. I got through Blighttown. I took down Quelaag. It only took me a few tries. I did end up taking advantage of some of the summons for that fight. Initially, I was doing it by myself. I think I got her down maybe halfway on my own. And then I tried with one summon, and we got her down to a sliver of health, then she killed me. And then I ended up going another time. I mean, the next time I went in, I was like, you know what, I actually probably could summon two people, because there's two different summon symbols here. And because I wasn't even thinking about the fact that I could do that before, and so I summoned two people. I went in, I took her out, and rang the bell, and spoke to the spider lady thing, and I wanted to open up a secret passage that she gives you, or that she gives you if you give her enough humanity. And I had quite a bit. I had probably 13, 14, which was pretty good considering, usually I don't have anywhere near that much humanity on me. But I wasn't thinking about the fact that, oh, I'm probably actually going to need some more humanity in order to be able to ignite the bonfires and everything, so that I can properly, so that I can actually carry um, my full 10 Estus flasks, rather than only getting 5 when I save or respawn. So I just kind of had to deal with it for a little bit until I was able to get enough humanity to move forward. But after that, I went down to the Darkroot Basin. I took out the Hydra, which I think I did it kind of the harder way unintentionally. So I initially, like, when I went out to face it, I walked out to the water, and of course I sunk because I didn't know where the stopping point was. And so I'm thinking, okay, well, I don't know where I'm supposed to be. I look it up, and the way it's described, it sounds like the fall off is pretty close to the edge, no matter where you are. Turns out that's not the case, but I didn't realize this until long after I actually beat it. And so I'm just basically staying like right on the beach outside of the water, and waiting for, getting close enough to where it'll lunge at me with its head so I can attack the heads. But the problem I ended up having was eventually got to the point where the only head that was left was the it is the leftmost of the Hydra's heads. So it's like up against a wall, so if it attacks, I can't even hit it because it like clips through the wall. And so I found like this spot on a rock off to the side where I could stand there. It would lunge at me, it wouldn't be able to hit me at all. And just slowly plucked away at it with arrows until I finally beat it. And so I beat that, and then did some stuff in like Darkroot Forest. I can't remember which one it is, but anyway, I went to fight the Moonlight Butterfly. I did die to her once, but then I beat her after that. And it was really just because I wasn't being smart enough to actually try to avoid her attacks. So it's just me being stupid. And then here, I know that there was something else I did. I could have sworn there was another boss. I mean, I know that the main boss I ended up beating and get to momentarily, but I feel like there was another boss in there somewhere that I fought. Maybe not. Maybe that was it. But the one that I did just beat earlier today, and this is one of the reasons I'm more annoyed at the Steam Deck recording transfer stuff, is Sif. So I recorded the whole fight that I beat Sif, and of course I could only actually like save and share a minute of it. But yeah, like I didn't actually find Sif particularly difficult for the most part. Like the first time I fought it, I got it down halfway without much difficulty. It was pretty easy to dodge, at least most of the time, just because you dodge towards in order to avoid getting hit by the sword most of the time. And then, like I made use of my fire spells. Like I have, I think Combustion is the main one that I was using. Maybe it's Great Flame. I can't remember what it's called. But anyway, it's a fire spell that you have to be close, and it just like puts out a stream of fire, but it's pretty strong. And so I use that would get underneath, use that until I ran out of those, then would use my fireballs until I ran out of those, then pulled out my Zweihander and used that until I took it out. I mean, I still got hit plenty. I still died probably 6 or 7 times going through that fight, especially like the first time I went back into the fight right after the first time I went back in after dying. And immediately I walk through the gate, and it jumps up and hits me and kills me in one shot. After that, I realized, okay, the second I walk in the gate, I need to dodge forward so that I'm not getting hit. And that seemed to work. Most of the time, there was just like one time where he jumped over to the side, and so even though I dodged forward, He moved over. He like jumped to the side of the gate, so then he was able to still hit me really easily, and it ended up just being like, okay, I'm dead. But yeah, so I kept making progress little by little. Didn't have any summons, just took it out. It really wasn't that hard of a fight. I know it's supposed to be like a sad, make you feel bad because Sif's not actually bad and everything, but like I was just so focused on surviving that it didn't matter too much to me. I'm just like, you know what? I know what this is. Yes, I love dogs, but this is a wolf, and I know it's supposed to be a good wolf. But the fact is that it attacked me. I didn't attack it. If I had had the choice to not attack it, I would have not attacked it, but I didn't have a choice. So it was her or me, and I took her out, and I'm okay with it, and I beat her. So I just started walking into whatever that area is that opens after you ring the second bell. I can't remember the name of it. Basically, all I've done is just walk in the gate, take out the first two lizard guard things, and then I had to stop playing. That was it. But I'm playing mostly offline, so I can very easily just stop whenever I need to. Just turn off the Steam Deck and come back to it as needed. So something else I did discover, or that I learned, is that if you quit the game, usually when you start the game back up, it'll just take you exactly where you left. It's not like it takes you back to the bonfire. I didn't know that on my own, but like I found that when I was trying to get some of those crystal lizards, and I found out about that, and turns out it works basically everywhere. So pretty useful. I mean, I wouldn't ever try to do it during a boss fight, probably, because I think that would just be idiotic. Because then it would probably be like, start back up, die immediately. But it can be useful for other situations, especially if you're like really far from a bonfire. But of course, when you're playing on the Steam Deck, you don't have to deal with that anyway, because you can just hibernate the system and then you're good to go. And even if you're playing online, it will just quit the game as soon as you start it up because you lost the connection. And then when you start it back up, it should pick you up exactly where you left off. So, but yeah, that's about all I have to say with that. I'm hooked on Dark Souls again and planning to play it just a bunch. So.
So is that all the games you played this week?
That's everything.
Okay. All right. So I've got quite a few things to discuss. So great. I'm very glad that you got back into Dark Souls and hearing everything. It's also interesting too hearing certain things because I think I partially did some things out of order because I went to Darker Route slightly earlier because I took out the Hydra probably I probably went to that area almost as soon as you were able to. I probably shouldn't have, but I still stumbled upon that area, and I'll be honest, I think partially because I was really under leveled. I pretty much just cheesed that whole Hydra fight. I just bought a bunch of arrows and was like just picking it off because I was I admit that that's like one thing that I actually would cheese out and would not face in honest combats. But oh man, I'm trying to remember what. So it's called Sen's Fortress? Is that the area?
I believe so.
Okay, so it's sort of like almost. I don't think it's
so.
Sort of like
it's like a giant castle that's connected to. It's right next to the bonfire above the blacksmith.
Okay, then yeah. Okay, yeah. So okay, you're making good progress then. So once you get through Sen's Fortress, let me see. I'm trying to remember because
I mean, I'm not entirely sure if everything I'm doing is technically in order. What I'm doing is I found this checklist online that just has, this is everything you should do in this order, and there's a lot of running around back and forth and doing things what I believe is considered out of order. Because like Darkroot Basin, I think is like is a lower level than some of the stuff I've already done. Right now I'm at, I think, level 47. But yeah, so I don't think I'm necessarily doing everything in order per se, but I'm doing it in an order that is suggested, and it's been really helpful to me.
Mm, yeah. So once you get through Sen's Fortress, then you sort of reach the what some people consider the starting to the point where the game actually truly begins, because then you reach Anne Orlando, and getting through the first part, I'm just gonna let you know, like getting through the first part of the area is going to be partially difficult because of, I mean, the first part, when you get there are these giants you have to be watch out for, but then eventually there will be these archers once you reach sort of like the main cathedral area, and just keep an eye out for those guys because they will, the black, I think they're the Black Knights, they're not the Silver Knights yet, but those guys will definitely try to snipe you, and then once you get close enough, then they take out their swords and just have at it. So just be on the lookout. But I'm very glad that you got back into the game. It's definitely good, and also you don't actually have to feel completely bad because you face Sif the normal way, and not the technically secret canon way. So that way is the way where you don't have to feel bad because you don't have to go through the history with Sif. So you don't have to feel that bad about fighting Sif.
Yeah, I don't know anything about the history. I mean, like, I think I had heard about it years ago when I first heard about the fight, but I don't remember any of that. So
basically, technically, is if you go through the DLC of Dark Souls before you go through the fight, it unlocks an alternative cutscene that you have.
Okay.
And also you also do something I mean, I think you could possibly skip doing this in the DLC, but there's something you can do there where you first meet Sif, technically, before you meet Sif in the boss fight. So that's why it's like the sad way when you actually do fight.
Gotcha. That makes more sense because, like, my friend who's really big into Dark Souls, I've definitely gone to him for tips. He said that it's supposed to make you feel really sad. I'm just like, I don't feel anything. Like, it's just a boss. And like, I know that it's supposed to be sad, but I couldn't figure out why. And it's like, okay, well, that makes sense. And I haven't told him that, because I didn't realize there was like additional information that would make it actually a sad event, because legitimately it's just like, I walk in, I see a grave with a sword in front of it, and then the dog shows up, the wolf shows up, and grabs the sword and starts attacking me. And that's all I know. So yeah.
It's very funny that you also meant, I'm sort of jumping backwards now to Bloodstain. It's very funny that you mentioned David Hayter, because I remembered when I was backing Bloodstain that I saw his name listed. I was like, oh, cool. Is he going to be Jeeble? Is he going to be like our Dracula character? And then when I played the game, I was like, this doesn't sound like David Hayter at all. And so I'm like, wait, so who did David Hayter actually voice? Then once you actually meet Zangetsu, I was like, there he is. Like, oh, yes. Yes. He did a great job. I'm trying to actually remember where you would need to go, because I feel like I should know where you need to go next, and
I'm pretty sure that it has something to do with the sword that he gave you, but I don't remember what specifically he said, and I can never. Maybe I just need to like look at my journal or something and see if I can find something specific that tells me some idea of what I need to do.
Okay, I think it's I think you need to go to the library area, because I think now you have what you need. You might have to use the invert ability. But this is the part where, if I remember correctly, you're about to actually confront Jeeble, I think.
Okay. Because like I know what room he's in, but I don't. But like, because remember, I got the bad ending when I killed him early, and I wasn't sure if I should be heading to him yet or not. So,
well, I will say you do need the sword for it.
Right.
And
oh yeah, that's right. Because I remember now he mentioned something about there being like some sort of spirit controlling Giebel, and that the sword was needed in order to take her out. But I just haven't been thinking, okay, well, I just haven't been sure about whether or not I'm supposed to go to that room, because I don't want to start the encounter, find out, oh, I'm not supposed to face him yet, and then get another bad ending. So,
yeah. But you do not have everything you need now to proceed now. So you can go and face him.
Okay.
And I think when you get there, you'll be able to tell how you're supposed to use it.
Gotcha. Okay.
But yeah.
That's good to know. Yeah, one thing I do want to mention with Dark Souls that, so I was thinking about, okay, where am I compared to where I was on Switch? Because obviously I played a bunch on Switch already before I restarted it on Steam. And right now, I've beaten more bosses than I had on Switch, and definitely been to areas that I never got to on Switch. The only thing I've done on Switch that I have not done here is going down into the catacombs and facing Pinwheel.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I'm just, like I said, I'm following that checklist as best as I can. I mean, occasionally I'll skip a step, like if it's something where it says you can kill this person. Like, for example, there's can't remember the name of the guy, but he's one of the hunters in the Hunter Forest, and if you talk to him, then after you beat Sif or Sif or whatever, he will go down into Blight Town. And seeing as how I would like to still be able to go through the forest without getting attacked by everyone, I'm maintaining my allegiance, and I'm not killing the guy. Because it's funny, so when I played it on Switch, I encountered that area, that forest. Of course, coming in through the door. I can't remember which door it is, but anyway, coming in through the door on the opposite side of where that cat lady thing is. And so I had gone through, and I tried going through, and I just keep running into these hunters that come and try to attack me. And it's like one that I kept farming to get him to jump off the ledge for a bit. But then otherwise, it was just like, okay, I just completely avoided that place on Switch. And when I first went to that area, it's like I'm looking at the walkthrough. It says, talk to this cat lady. I'm not seeing her. I mean, after I cross the bridge, I'm not seeing her. Mostly because it's just a checklist. Like, it doesn't have any pictures or anything. And so I'm walking forward trying to see, okay, where is she? Getting attacked by all the hunters. I managed to kill all of them, one after another. And then eventually I go back and find out, okay, this is where she is. She's in the wall, in the building right after you cross the bridge. You talk to her, you join the clan, and then the hunters don't attack you. It's like, okay, that's nice. I don't mind changing my allegiance just so that I don't get attacked by all these people, because they're a pain in the butt to deal with, and I don't want to have to deal with them every single time. So, but yeah, so right now, of course, like I said, I'm going into whatever the name of the place is, Sen's Fortress. And yeah. Anyway.
Nice.
I'm enjoying it. And of course it's, it's perfect on Steam Deck. It just really is, because you get that 60 frames per second locked, like it doesn't drop at all. And it's just fantastic experience. So, having a good time. And who knows, when I'm done with this, I may decide I want to play another Souls-like, but I have no idea right now. I mean, it really just depends on how I feel at the end of this, because I may very well feel like, okay, I'm ready to play the next Dark Souls whenever I have money to buy it. Or I may just decide, well, maybe I'll try out something like Mortal Shell, because I already own that. Or maybe I'll just wait and go through the Darksiders games so that I can play Darksiders 3. Or maybe I'll play Jedi Fallen Order, since that's got some Souls-like elements to it. I don't know. Doesn't really matter. Anyway, I'm babbling. All right. Anything else?
No, sir.
All right, let's get into the news. And speaking of Darksiders, there was a new Darksiders game announced. So I'll go ahead and bring up the story on that. This is publisher THQ Nordic and developer Gunfire Games are working on a new game in the Darksiders series. They announced, and that's all they've said. They have a very brief teaser trailer. I didn't even watch the teaser trailer because for me it's not going to be relevant since I haven't played through any of the games, but I currently own all of them because I've had 1 and 2 for probably 10 plus years, and I bought 3 and Genesis fairly recently through Instant Gaming. So, your thoughts?
Yeah. Out of curiosity, I just looked at. I watched the teaser trailer, and it really doesn't do much. It shows, I think, the council area, and then just shows the council members, and they just say, "Horsemen, prepare to ride again," or something like that. And that was pretty much it. I am intrigued to see what they do with this game. I'm assuming this would be a numbered title. This would be like a full Darksiders 4 rather than something like Genesis. And if that's the case, I would hope that this time they actually focus this one around Strife, since he didn't get his own game unlike all the other 3 characters. And I mean, sure, he was somewhat a focus in Genesis, but he technically shared the scene with War. So, I mean, and also the gameplay was completely different from the other games as well. So, if you had a full game with him as the main character, just like solely by himself, I think that would be good. But like, who knows? I mean, could they even try to make this one also co-op, but at this, or maybe not necessarily co-op like Genesis was, where it was a split screen, but something like a multiplayer game still, where you could play with as the other horsemen with other people as well. Like, if they do something like that, that would be interesting. I still haven't completed all the other games. Like, I played through the first one on the Wii U. I can't remember how far I got, but eventually I had to stop because the game kept crashing at a certain spot. And I think partially because the disc was scratched. But I did make it through the game pretty well. But I didn't play 2 or 3 because I still hadn't finished 1.
Right.
I think I mentioned this before at some point, but I did play Genesis with a friend at his house, and that was pretty good. We made some progress in the game, probably about maybe, I think it was maybe 33% in like a single night, so that wasn't bad. Fun game, I would say. Definitely is different from the others, but one thing I would say is I am curious to see about how they would approach this game, because of the fact that I believe the first one was sort of the original God of War trilogy-esque as far as the gameplay. Second one was kind of like a Zelda-ish type of game. The third one was more of a Souls-like from what I've heard. So I'm curious to seeing how they would approach this game.
Yeah.
That's one thing I would be interested in seeing, as in addition to like how the game plays and who you get to play as. But we'll see more in the future. So
yeah, that's definitely an interesting thought. I didn't realize that all of them were completely different in terms of gameplay. Like, I knew that the first one, or what I had heard was the first one was more Zelda-like, but I guess I didn't realize it was more God of War-like. I only played a tiny bit of it because it just wasn't really grabbing me. This was a long time ago. I haven't played 2 or any of the others. But if they've had a different style of gameplay for each game, they could very well go with something completely different. Or just do like God of War 2018 style or something. I don't know. Metroidvania. Make it a Metroidvania. That would be perfect. That would be excellent. So, if you hear this, THQ Nordic, because I know you're listening, make it a Metroidvania. That's what you need to do. 3D Metroidvania. Awesome. Be fantastic. So, yeah, anyway. But yeah, since I haven't played any of them, for me, it's more like I might be excited about this when I played the other games, assuming I actually get around to it. But right now, I'm just like, okay, cool. I'm glad that it's happening for people who are fans of the series, and I definitely will check it out if I get through the rest of the games first, because I would like to play all of them. And I think that it will probably end up being something that I actually really enjoy once I give it a fair chance, because that's typically been the pattern. It's like usually I will hold off on playing something for a while, like it won't grab me initially, and then I will eventually jump in and I'll just fall in love with the game. And that's happened to me several times. So I think that there's a real possibility of that. And of course, knowing that it is a different style of gameplay for each game also makes it more intriguing. So, yeah. Any other thoughts on that one?
No, sir.
All right, why don't you talk about this WB Discovery dealio?
Yeah, and I'm kind of have to pull up because, or at least on my phone, because for some reason the link was not working on my computer. So WB Games is allegedly possibly looking to sell its gaming division. Actually, let me just quickly pull up this here again. Sorry about that. So yeah, so this is something that came from the Financial Times. Okay, here we go. Right here. So Warner Brothers Discovery's senior management is looking to avoid a breakup of the company as executives race to reverse the Hollywood Group's plunging share price, which is something that has been happening lately. Actually, the stock has been falling by 40% since WBD4 was formed in 2022. And so one thing they're trying to do to avoid, the company breaking up is to sell off their gaming division, WB Games. Otherwise, they say they're going to face some legal challenges and stuff like that. Then there's a lot of stuff here talking about them struggling and also trying to compete with streaming platforms. Mentioned that that was not them. They had some layoffs before. That was something that was also mentioned. But yeah, that's primarily the main thing that I've talked about. Like, one thing that wasn't mentioned, which a couple people I had seen in other different things mentioned, was the fact that the IPs themselves weren't discussed at all, which is interesting because wondering about what happens with the IPs, if they're just something like the development teams themselves, along with the formal team name, or are they also going to take the IPs with them as well? So that's gonna be something that is interesting to note. But what are your thoughts on all of this?
It's definitely one of those things where it's just kind of we need to see what happens. There's at least some thoughts going around. I don't know if it's like Microsoft has actually said this or if it's people just speculating because of whether it's paranoia or being Xbox fans and wanting to see Microsoft acquire another company. But there's speculation that Microsoft might be interested in buying this out, and that's another one of those where it's like, I don't know if Microsoft needs to be buying more stuff, but I mean, if it is going away and they want to sell, if someone can buy them and have them make some good games, that could be interesting. But of course, the big issue is whether or not they would have access to any of the WB properties, because that's significant. I mean, there's a lot of properties there, but there's also it's hard to see whether or not that would actually be something that would enable them to make games using existing properties, whether it's things like Batman, for example. I I think DC might be specifically tied to something else. I can't remember. I know Warner Brothers has had Batman in general, but I don't know if the games have been tied to Warner Brothers. So I don't know. That's about all I have to say at the moment on this.
Yeah. I've got multiple different thoughts on this, and it's going partially looking at WB as a whole in this situation is just that a lot of this is the company's fault being in these straits because just of the way they've handled things and also how they've dragged down so many different things by changing things for the modern audience. Just like how they've changed a whole lot of stuff, like with their DC properties. Like we discussed this, with the Batman Cape Crusader show that came out. How they've handled things with other aspects, like the Harley Quinn show, and just like in the games, Suicide Squad. Like so much stuff that they've changed. They completely alienated their audience, not just like their target audience, but the audience who actually were paying them in the first place, who wanted what they had. So a lot of the stuff I feel like they brought upon themselves. So I'm not completely too torn up about the fact that they are in this position when they dug the hole to begin with. But similar to what you're saying, it definitely would be interesting because it's almost like if you can't you can't use the properties, what value is there in actually buying up the company? Like, for example, if you're going to buy up WB Games, but you couldn't say have the rights to any of the Mortal Kombat games, like Mortal Kombat, it might not be as big as it once was, but it's still a pretty big seller. So if you couldn't have access to that, it's almost like what's the point? And I mean, I don't know how this also works out. And granted, there hasn't been anything recent in a long time. But say if they want to make another Lord of the Rings Mordor title, like would they have rights to do that? Which also even interesting enough, if they bought WB Games, would they also have the rights to the Nemesis system? Because I know that's something that WB patented, so they could use the Nemesis system. Would the company that purchases them actually also have that patent or not? That's something that would be interesting to note as well. And I guess also that if someone were to buy them, would they also then would they own the Wonder Woman game that's coming out or not? So that's also something that I had not considered before. But I don't know. I mean, I also think that I'm not really fond of anyone particular buying them up. Like, I don't think Microsoft needs to buy them up.
Right.
I think if they even try to do that, the FTC is going to be all up on them. Like, they're not even giving them a break now.
Right.
So if Microsoft does make any sort of attempt, they're going to face a lot of resistance in that aspect. But I don't know who else I would even think about seeing. If Amazon bought them, oh, good grief. I mean, please don't let me be Amazon. And I mean, I can't really think of anyone else. I definitely do not see Embracer doing it because Embracer's already trying to sell off companies or developers as it is, just so they can not be in financial straits. So I definitely wouldn't see Embracer trying to purchase WB Games, but I don't know. Maybe actually I can't remember whoever. Take-Two might probably do it though. I could probably see Take-Two doing it. That's probably within their. I could see Take-Two doing it. Wouldn't actually say that I want them to, but I could see Take-Two being a possible buyer.
Yeah. True. Well, who knows? All this will just right now. It's kind of just early talks, and we'll see what, if anything, comes up regarding it. well, I shouldn't say what if anything, but rather what comes up, because obviously something will come up. All right. Well, in other news, we just got the system requirements for Star Wars Outlaws. And as expected, it is very poorly optimized for PC. So much so that they require, in order to get even 720p resolution, you need to use FSR or DLSS upscaling. So we're not going to go over all of the specifics in terms of the various requirements, but what I will say is that in order to get just 1080p 60, which decent, not bad, you need to have a a RTX 3060 Ti, which has 8 gigs of video RAM, or an AMD Radeon 6700 XT, which has 12 gigs of video RAM, 16 gigs of RAM, 65 gigs of storage, which actually isn't that bad. But for that 1080p 60, with high graphics preset, with the upscaler set to quality, that's the only way to get that 1080p 60. So basically, you have to have a fairly beefy machine just to get basic resolution. And with the upscaling, basically, you are playing at 720p with upscaling. And that upscaling, at least from my experience, is garbage. It's always terrible. And there is absolutely no reason this should be happening. But I'm not going to get too much into my comments because, even though I've already given some of it away, I want to let you have a chance to talk about this.
Yeah, it's a real mess. And of course, the main thing here is from what I see is the fact that it's because ray tracing is enabled by not enabled. It's automatically set, and you cannot disable it at all, which is ridiculous. Like, you should have ray tracing and all that other stuff an option for people who want it as opposed to people who don't want it, because people like you and I, we don't like that sort of thing, because we would rather have the higher performance at the cost of the lighting looking a little prettier, at rather the shadows maybe looking a little better. We would rather have those extra frames. But the fact that that it's baked in and we can't disable it is annoying. And as a result of that, we have to use any sort of upscaler just to actually have decent performance. And using a 3060 Ti, I mean, granted, 3060, it's the Ti version though. Never mind. I was going to actually say, 3060 Ti for 1080p 60 FPS. Well, no. Even if it is at high settings, you should still be getting more than just 60 FPS with 3060 Ti. And yes, it is a previous gen card, but considering the fact that when people were on the 3000 series or even the 2000 series, and they're using a previous gen card, they could still use the previous gen cards and still have pretty good performance. Like, people were using 1060s for a very long time, and they were still getting pretty good performance. People were using 20 series cards and still getting very good performance. And the fact that you have to have a 3060 Ti just to get basic decent performance, 1080p 60 FPS, that is ridiculous to me. Like, there's no reason why this should be happening. And of course, like I said, in addition to the ray tracing, it's just poor optimization. Like, there's no reason why you need to have all this going on. And granted, also, again, I'm sorry, I misspoke, because it's not just decent performance. Decent performance if you use an upscaler. Like, you're not getting native resolution. You're not getting a native 1080p running at 60 FPS. You're getting an upscaled 1080p uh, because of the fact that people are not optimizing these games well enough to run. And I mean, also for a 6700 XT, like I don't remember how it scales, but I'm pretty certain that it is at least a little better than a 3060 Ti. I could be wrong here, but from my understanding, from what I've seen before, it should be at least a little better. So that also needing to be at 1080p upscaled to get 60 FPS is very sad. I don't. I mean, the only thing I could probably understand, and even then, I mean, I don't think you should need an upscaler just to get this, is the minimum requirements. Like the 5600 XT, the 1660, GTX 6060, those are relatively lower end cards. They're older GPUs, so I can understand them maybe being the minimum. But I still think that you should be able to get the type of performance without using an upscaler. Like I don't think that is good at all. And I mean, needing a 4080, an RTX 4080, and well, I'm great. Is this? Yeah, in fact, you know what? This even makes it worse because the ultra settings are not even talking about using a sort of ray tracing. The fact that you need to use a 4080 or a 79 XTX card, which is the highest AMD card, just to do 4K 60, I think is insane. I mean, what are we doing? What are we doing now? And the fact that 3080 is just high settings, like, this is ridiculous to me. Yeah. And I mean, I even think I don't know. Like, this is supposed to be what they call a quadruple A title, and they're not even putting in quadruple A work to get these games ranked the way they should be. And they're charging $70 unless you get their one of their crazy tiers things where it's like, or you could, buy this version and it's like $130 to get this version of Outlaws. And it's like, no, I'm not doing that. But yeah, those are essentially my thoughts in a nutshell.
Oh, where to begin? Well, okay, so first of all, a developer requiring upscaling as the fact that it's a requirement is just nonsense. There's absolutely zero reason there should be any requirement for this. Now, looking at the gameplay footage, I will say I actually don't think it looks bad. In fact, I think it looks better than it did before in general. Like, I don't think it looks like something I wouldn't enjoy playing. Apart from the really bad AI and some of the stuff that doesn't make any sense, like a grenade, a thermal detonator, only causing someone to just be propelled forward without any damage whatsoever done to them, or the terrible AI where she can shoot a stormtrooper in the face, point blank, and the stormtrooper is just like, nah, whatever, doesn't do anything, and then she punches him a couple times and he's dead. It's like, how does that work? So it's like, okay, you have issues with that in general. Never mind, the way that they literally made a beautiful woman look ugly. I mean, like, she legitimately just looks ugly. Like, she does not look anywhere near what the actual model looks like. Completely so far off. This whole upscaling thing is just garbage. It is complete and utter garbage to do that. There's no reason this should be happening. I don't think that in general the overall visuals look bad from the preview that they showed, at least the IGN preview, which I only watched through someone else watching it because I'm not going to support IGN. But it's just kind of, they're so focused on making the visuals look pretty that they don't focus on actually making the game run properly. Like, I think in some ways, I honestly think that like Assassin's Creed Odyssey looks better, apart from some still shots that are very clearly they did what they could to make it look as good as possible. But like, I think Assassin's Creed Odyssey looks kind of better, and the system requirements are nowhere near as high for significantly better performance and visuals. And I'm even, like, when I was playing Assassin's Creed Odyssey on PC, I'm doing requirements that are somewhere in between. I mean, like, it's hard to say exactly because I have a 2080 Ti which has 12 gigs of video RAM. But like I'm typically running the game at 150% resolution. So basically 1440p thereabouts. I'm getting 90 frames per second consistent pretty much all the time. Occasional drops when there's like a lot on screen, but most of the time it's in the 80s and 90s. There's no reason for this. Now, it probably is an Unreal Engine 5 game, would be my guess, and that's probably a big part of it. And obviously, if they're forcing ray tracing, that's certainly going to be a part of it. I mean, because ray tracing just tanks performance across the board. I'm really going to be curious how the final product looks on consoles compared to PC, because the gameplay that IGN did, the character models did not look good. Like, that was one part that didn't look good. Like, I thought the environments looked good. Like, when you're looking at the chick from behind, and you're looking at, like, the environment in general, like the Jawas, things like that. It's like, those all look pretty good. Of course, the main character going into that Sarlacc pit, and she's, like, practically yelling out her whispers. And nobody hears her. It's just like, whatever, Apparently everybody around her is completely deaf. They can't hear her yelling out. She's like, I'm the quietest mouse. I live in the quietest house. And nobody hears her. I mean, at least Aloy in the Horizon games, she does talk to herself a lot. I mean, she's by herself all the time. I'll give her a break. But at least she whispers when she goes into areas where she needs to be quiet. She's actually like whispering really quietly. It's like, I need to do this. I need to do that. That sort of thing. Just, thinking out loud. But it's like, no. I'm just going to yell what I need to do, and you're not going to hear me at all. I need to get down into that pit and see what's in there. I need to get that Sarlacc tooth. Anyway, I'm just kind of rambling about random stuff. Overall, though, I think it's absolute trash, as I said before, that they are requiring upscaling in order to get decent resolution and performance. There is no excuse for this, except that they are being lazy. And they're assuming, well, PC gamers could just use upscales. I'm guessing the console version is going to use upscaling, too. I mean, typically, like, they'll do some upscaling to a degree anyway in order to get 4K and all of that. Obviously, I mean, because they have to. But it's a whole different story when you are saying, we have to do this in order to get it. And if they get the upscaling to work well enough to where it still looks good, then it might not be that big of a deal. But my experience so far with DLSS, with FSR, is that visually it does not enhance the image. I mean, it might enhance in some areas, but then it messes up other areas, and it's just not good. I don't like using it. I even, tried using it for like the frame generation, and it tactically worked, but it just felt a little off. Just enough to where I'm like, I don't like this, and that's why I turned it off. So, anyway, I'm done yapping about that. You got any other thoughts?
No. I mean, I could say more stuff. I feel like it's just stuff that we've said before about the entire usage of upscaling in games nowadays when games shouldn't have to use it.
Right. Yep. Now, like, I will say one thing. I'm totally fine with them requiring an SSD for games like this. It makes sense. I mean, having the SSD to help those things load better, load faster, like, it makes sense. Like, they require it for Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. And It definitely needs it. Like, it technically works if you don't use one, but those transitions are really slow when you do that. Or like Starfield is a great example, because I remember when I started playing that, at first I didn't realize, because I had done a remote install, like because I gave into hype. I bought the game like the day of that the early access started, and I did a remote install from my phone so that when I got home, I would be able to hop on my PC and start playing. And it looked fine. It performed okay, but there was really bad audio sync issues, and I think there were spots where it was just like it would just have severe stutter or something. I can't remember exactly what it was. I'd have to look back through like comments I had written down before somewhere when I was telling people about it. But it turns out it was because I had installed it to my HDD, and that's why I was having serious issues. And then once I switched it over to my SSD, issues disappeared, and I didn't have any of those problems anymore. But yeah, there's a big difference between requiring an SSD, which I think this game probably should, even if it doesn't say that. I'm guessing it probably, yeah, it does require an SSD. And it's like, okay, that makes sense. I think games are far enough along to where it makes sense to require an SSD for a new game. But requiring upscalers, especially when the upscalers just typically don't work well, that's not cool. There's no reason for this. Anyway, yeah. I'm done. All right. Any last thoughts on that topic?
No, nothing else.
Okay. All right. You want to talk about Final Fantasy XVI?
Certainly. All right. So there was a whoops. Let me just pull this up here. There was some hidden data in the latest NVIDIA driver that had information for Gamescom, for a surprise Gamescom release, and that is for the Final Fantasy XVI, which I will say I'm pretty certain was on the list of games on the original NVIDIA leak from before. Mm-hmm. But yeah, and actually is.
Yeah, and Square Enix did confirm it previously that it was coming, so it's just been a question.
Okay, yeah. So we now, we have more information about that, and it definitely. Wait. Oh gosh. Oh, where did it just crashed out on me? Oops. So trying to remember if there was like a. Okay, here we go. Yeah, so pulling this back up again since it closed out on me. Oops. Okay, yeah. So it was mentioned, but unfortunately, it didn't say too much else as far as like a. It didn't say like when the game would be released. However, the Gamescom does take place on August 21st through 25th. So that is most likely when we will see it. If we see something else, then, as far as like maybe some other stuff, we'll see it then. But we'll that's like what, 2 weeks or so away? Yeah, like 2 Wednesdays from now. Going up until the following Sunday. So that we should definitely hear something then. I don't know when Square Enix is when they're out. I mean, it didn't say when their actual presentation is, but we should definitely hear something during that range. Also, it will come with the DLCs and expansions as well. That currently, of course, have just been on PS5. So, that being said, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, obviously, we've known for a long time this was coming. Between, I think it was in the NVIDIA leak. I'm not positive on that front, but Um, whether that is a factor or not, Square Enix confirmed a long time ago that it was coming to PC. It just wouldn't be the same time as PS5. And I personally, of course, I'm definitely looking forward to playing this one. It's not going to be a day one purchase for me, most likely. Really just because I have several other Final Fantasy games I would like to play first. At minimum, I want to play Final Fantasy 15 before I play 16. I know they're not connected in any way, but because of the fact that I've had 15 for a number of years, I've never played it other than, well, I played like an hour. And it actually runs pretty well on Steam Deck too, so it's just one of those that it's like, I really want to play that before I go into the full-on action RPG that is Final Fantasy XVI. And either way, I think it's super exciting that it's coming, considering the fact that there's these drivers listed or the latest NVIDIA drivers have stuff listed about Final Fantasy 16 says that, yeah, this is definitely coming soon, probably during Gamescom. And yeah,
I'm maybe I misheard something, or maybe I must have heard something else, because I almost thought that you had mentioned you played Final Fantasy 15 at some point, but
well, I played some of it. I've never gotten far in it. Like, I've played like an hour, maybe 2 hours at the most.
Okay.
13 okay. I played, and 13.2 I was playing last year a bit. But yeah, 15 I basically haven't played.
Okay. It is it. I'm guessing then that they're gonna have, because the DLC is coming, maybe it's a complete edition rather than having the game and just selling the DLC separately, which I think. I mean, I don't see the point, in the fact that it's been a while, so I think it would be better.
Right. No, it'll definitely be the full game with everything included. That's what they did with Remake, with Final Fantasy VII Remake. They included the Intergrade or Intermission DLC, full package.
Now, one thing I guess I should say is, do you expect the game to be an Epic's temporary exclude? No.
No, I think Square Enix learned their lesson. They haven't had any Epic exclusive games in a while. Because they didn't do it with Octopath Traveler 2. They didn't do it with... Well, I'm trying to think of what their most recent releases are, but I'm pretty sure that all of their games since Final Fantasy VII Remake dropped on Steam, at least, have not been Epic exclusive. I could be wrong on that. Actually, no, that's not true, because Forspoken was Epic exclusive initially, but so maybe since Forspoken, they haven't done any Epic exclusives, and they've seen very clearly the problems with doing things on a single platform, or putting things on Epic. Now, I could be totally wrong on this, and ultimately, to me, it's not going to matter a whole lot, because the chances that I would be ready to play it when it drops, even if it was on Steam day one, it's very low. So.
Yeah. I mean, I would probably get it at some. I would probably wait. If I were going to get it, I would probably wait to get it on a good sale, just because I already know it's probably going to be $70.
Yeah,
probably. Most likely. And also, I don't know. I feel like Final Fantasy. I guess I'm just not really into the idea of Final Fantasy. I mean, granted, I'm very grateful they went back to their fantasy roots, as opposed to sort of like the more steampunkish, somewhat also sci-fi fantasy blend, but the more medieval fantasy aspect of 6. I'm glad they went to that aspect, but I would like to sort of also see a more, rather, whether it's a turn-based or a pseudo turn-based, as far as like the active time battle system, I would sort of like to see something like that again, but I don't think we'll ever see that again in a Final Fantasy game. Now Square will put out games that are like that, like they have with Octopath Traveler, and then I think Lost Sphere, and then a couple other smaller
Right.
games as well. But I don't think Final Fantasy itself will ever go to that again.
Yeah, but that's just when we'll get at least remakes. And we know that there's a 9 remake coming, and that's supposed to be back to maintain the traditional turn-based battle system. But apart from that, yeah, I agree with you. I don't think they're going back to turn-based for Final Fantasy. I think they've just been too long separated from that, because really the last proper Final Fantasy that was turn-based was probably 10. Because 13, well, I guess 13, that's true. So 13 was also turn-based, but 12 was not, and 14 is not, 15 was not, and 16 is not. So I guess, yeah, it's basically 13. I mean, 13 wasn't even like full turn-based. Like it was, but it wasn't. Like it was more traditional, closer to traditional Final Fantasy battle system than 12, but it definitely was not the same as 10, 9, and all the ones before it. So, yep. I mean, it's kind of sad, but at the same time, I honestly don't mind. There's plenty. I mean, back in the earlier days with Final Fantasy was like the premier turn-based battle system kind of, RPG. And nowadays we have so many more. Plus, Dragon Quest, at least so far, is still turn-based. I mean, 11 kind of like went sort of out of that, but not really. Well, like it was still turn-based. It was just like you had free movement, kind of. And it was bizarre. I mean, thankfully you could turn that off, because I hated that. It's like it was completely pointless, because you couldn't actually like dodge attacks by moving around. You're just moving around for no reason. It just like they gave you the illusion of freedom of movement, but really it didn't make any difference whatsoever in terms of how your attacks would connect or how their attacks would connect. And so you could turn it off and just set it up so that it was 100%. You're standing in one spot like normal, and then just using your turn-based stuff. But anyway,
that's weird.
Yeah, it is indeed. But yeah, and they also they have a bunch of turn-based other things. I mean, they have Octopath, and they have Bravely Default. I mean, I think they have enough variety to where Final Fantasy doesn't need to be turn-based anymore. And they did, still have, 11 different Final Fantasy games that were all turn-based before they completely swapped off of that, starting with 14. Or maybe not. Well, 14 was the first where they completely abandoned it because they weren't turn-based with 11, they weren't turn-based with 12, but then 13 was turn-based, basically. And then 14, they went completely off of turn-based and have not gone back since. So
14's an MMO, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yes, indeed. I never played it. I've heard it's great, but I'm not interested in getting involved in an MMO. It's like, no thanks, that's okay. I don't have time. I don't have time for an MMO. I don't even have time for Destiny, and I love Destiny, but it's like I don't have time for it. I have too many games already. Even if they gave it to me for free, I'm just like, no, I can't do another game like that. I'm already at a point where like I want to keep playing Destiny, but I also kind of want to be completely done with it, because I don't want to be thinking about, oh man, there's still so much left that I need to do in that game. And it's just like, yeah. And then, of course, obviously, the direction that Bungie's going is just, between what we talked about last week and the fact that two of the major guys who have been involved with at least Destiny from the beginning, I think Bungie as well before that, the fact that they both left, it's just like, you're killing me, Bungie. Well, you're killing yourself is really what it comes down to. But anyway, not getting back into that topic. Any other thoughts on that?
No, sir.
All right, so it's a bit of a sad day. Game Informer, after 33 years of being a publication, as far as I know, it's probably not the last, but it's one of the last holdouts of video game magazines. And it has been completely shut down in every single sense. Everyone was let go. The doors were shuttered. They closed down the Twitter account. All of that. It's just gone. Your thoughts?
I was definitely it's kind of surprised to hear that, actually. It definitely was interesting to hear. I mean, because the fact that it has been around for so long. I mean, it's been longer than I have, but it's definitely interesting. I mean, granted, the way a lot of things have been changing, not just like in like so many different ways. It shouldn't be too surprising, just because the fact that, with gaming news, like the whole medium has just changed. Like you can look up something online nowadays and just like find something straight away. So whether it's like new development of a game, whether it's just because some tweet has gone out, whether it's because some leak has been released online, whether it's because someone has shared a video because they were attending an event firsthand. Like it changes. The whole landscape has just changed from the days where you go into a store, or if you have a mail-in subscription to a magazine. Like it's completely changed. I mean, some magazines even went completely online, and stuff like that. So in that sense, I can't be ultra surprised. Now, I stopped, I actually had been subscribed to Game Informer, like partially because I had a GameStop Pro membership, and that was one of the reasons why it's one of the reasons why I even got a subscription to GameStop Pro, because of the fact that I was like, I kind of like getting the magazine, because before that I had been picking up, before that was over, was Nintendo Power magazine. I had been getting some of those, and then I got Game Informer magazines, and I enjoyed reading that. I enjoyed, getting the latest news in gaming, and of course that technically was still around when stuff started getting more so online, but at the same time, primarily you could get stuff, through a magazine. So I had been subscribed for a long time, and even when I stopped going to GameStop to buying games, because I was like, I can just like buy games elsewhere and whatnot, and sometimes not have to worry about buying used games and how the quality of the games I'm actually getting, which is where I got Darksiders for the Wii U. But I still stay subscribed because I wanted to get my issues of Game Informer. But eventually I was just like, I don't know. I just like stopped caring, and so I just like I'm ending my subscription. But for when I was enjoying it, I enjoyed it. I don't know how things have changed, because I know a whole lot of stuff has changed with places like IGN and Kotaku. I don't know if anything had been impacting Game Informer or not, because I had stopped reading like probably around 20, like the late 2010s, like sometime around there. That's probably when I stopped subscribing. But if that had any impact, then that probably maybe it played a role. But I definitely still think as a whole, it's just the fact that the medium has changed so much that Game Informer can't keep up. And I'm granted, another aspect is the fact that GameStop as a whole is just been hanging on by a thread. And I mean, if it wasn't for what happened like last year or the year before with the whole meme stock stuff, like GameStop probably wouldn't exist. I mean, granted, I have to give GameStop credit, because I remember when I was like 16, 17, and my friends and I were talking about like, yeah. So when do you think GameStop's gonna be closed? And it's like, and we're like, saying like, yeah, they're probably gonna be gone soon. And it's like they're still here technically
Yeah.
years later, and like 10 plus years later, I'm just like, wow, they technically should be gone by now, but they're still here. But yeah, I mean, I mean, I just think that the whole, and I mean, I think that some of the way that GameStop also has handled the situation has not been good. Because I heard somewhere also that I think it was the editor in chief or someone who was one of the main staff of Game Informer made out a message, just like a goodbye message. I didn't see it or anything like that, but I heard that he put out a message on the Game Informer Twitter page, just like to say goodbye for stuff. And the GameStop execs did not like it, and they shut down the Twitter account because of that, which I think is pretty scummy to do. Just when someone just like say like, yeah, we enjoyed doing our work for so and so years and whatnot, and we're just saying goodbye. Thank you for reading our work, and then just like, yeah, we're completely shutting you down. We're not allowed to say you're not allowed to say goodbye to everyone, which I think, yeah, I mean, GameStop, while I have also enjoyed like that for a long time, that was where I got a lot of games. A whole lot of their practices, though, just were not great. I mean, how they handle games, opening new games and selling them like that, and even throwing out working games, intentionally scratching them up and disposing of them, is I don't know why. And the fact that I even heard recently they said like, talking about game preservation, the fact that they actually have that practice where they scratch up and dispose of old games if no one buys them because, they're trying to make space. I'm like, where's the game preservation in that?
Yeah.
But that's primarily my thoughts on the entire situation.
So I will be completely honest on the fact. I think at most I may have subscribed to Game Informer for 2 or 3 issues. I mean, it was very brief. I always liked gaming magazines growing up. I think that maybe, actually it might have been more Game Pro now that I think about it. Game Pro was the main magazine that I really enjoyed when I was younger. And but I was like never subscribed to it. Like just occasionally I'd buy an issue in a store because it was mostly when I was a kid and didn't really have money. So I would occasionally check one of those out. And when I actually finally got to a point that I could subscribe to a magazine, I subscribed to Nintendo Power because I was a big Nintendo fanboy. And so it was the magazine that I read, and I don't know how many years I had that magazine, but it was probably like 3 to 4 years or something like that before I finally had to stop because, of course, they closed down. I actually did get to interview one of the guys from Nintendo Power. This was for the Frozen Gamers podcast from years ago. I would put it up, except the audio quality is just so horrendous that unless I can figure out a good way to clean it up, which may or may not be doable, it's really difficult to ever put that up. Plus, for most people, it's not even going to be relevant anyway. It's just one of those things like, well, if I had lots of time on my hands, I might take my old podcast episodes and go back and clean up the audio and repost them just as a separate thing to say, hey, this is all the old stuff that I did from like 2013 to 2016, and then even then, of course, we didn't actually, like, it wasn't every week, so it was different than what we're doing. But anyway, I digress. Game Informer shutting down, I knew it was inevitable. Like, I'm surprised it actually lasted as long as it did, especially after Nintendo Power shut down. It's just like, as you said, the direction that gaming news in general has gone, it's just not shocking at all that it's happening. I don't know what, if any, gaming magazines still really exist out there. I think there's probably some like over in the UK, and I wouldn't be surprised if Japan, like, you still have Famitsu at the very least. I'm sure you have some others. But it's pretty much just a situation where this is going to happen eventually. It sucks, but I mean, I'm sure probably even people who were part of Game Informer knew it was only a matter of time, and they probably went out with the right attitude, recognizing that yeah, it sucks that we're losing our jobs, but we also kind of knew this would happen at some point. And of course, GameStop, I'm just like, in general, I'm not a big fan of them, mostly because of the whole opening new games thing. Thankfully, the few times that I have gotten games from them in recent years, they've always been sealed. So, but it's like a couple times I actually pre-ordered, like with the Danganronpa collection, because it's like I figured that was something that was going to end up being rare, and I wanted to actually have all of them on a cartridge. But then when I got the physical version of Ghost Runner for Switch, that was also sealed. And I've gotten like a couple used things, but in general, like I really hated the fact that they did the new games. They would open them up. That made me mad. I mean, thankfully, the couple situations where I actually had to deal with that, they were games where it was like the game was significantly discounted, so it wasn't as big of a deal to me. But otherwise, I'm just like, no, I can't support that. And of course, anytime you would bring them a used game, they'd just give you pennies for it, basically. It was completely worthless taking anything to them. And then they'd turn around and sell it, mark it up. Like, they'd give you, they'd basically give you a tenth of what they sell it for. And it was just ridiculous. It wasn't even worth it, so I gave up on them. I do remember before them, though, Funko Land, which is what we had in Sacramento when I was a kid, and I mean, then eventually it was either turned into or bought out by GameStop. I don't know exactly how that works, but Funko Land is where I got my very first game console, or rather the first one I was able to buy and own, which was the Sega Genesis. And because of the fact that it was after the Sega Genesis was basically on its way out the door, I got like the Sega Genesis itself for $30, and then a handful of games, and spent like less than $100 for everything. Got a bunch of stuff out of it. I don't have any of those anymore. I got rid of them a long time ago, but that was what got me more into gaming. And then I got the Nintendo 64 later that year, which was my first Nintendo console that I actually owned, and became a Nintendo fan from there, and then eventually a fanboy, and now no longer a fanboy, but still a fan. And I'm obviously way off topic from this Game Informer thing, but yeah, it was a good run. They lasted a really long time, and it's just too bad that they're gone, but it is what it is. At least their last issue is going to go out, so last issue is issues 367. So cool. Yeah. And not cool. I don't know. Anyway, well. All right. So now, just give me a second. What's going on with this? Okay, never mind. All right. Back to the news. So, any final thoughts on Game Informer?
No, sir.
All right. So the big story. Half-Life 3 confirmed? Maybe? It's kind of funny because there's a tweet went out from Wario64. Great Twitter account to follow. And on the Reddit account, or the Reddit link that he gives, so someone, first comment you see on there is Half-Life 3 Copium is back, boys. It's like, yep, Copium indeed. Yeah. So let me just back up here. So there is a voiceover portfolio from Valve, or rather, there's a voiceover portfolio. I don't know what the actual like original source is. I think it's something related to Steam. Let me see if I can find the specifics. I don't know why I'm not finding the specific information, but short version, and of course you feel free to chime in after I finish talking if there's anything that actually feel free to chime in anytime if I'm just getting stuff wrong and if you know more information than I do, because like I listened to this earlier and I just don't remember all the details. But basically, the short version is there is listed that there's a video game by Valve with voiceover. And the video game title is Project White Sands, which I guess is a location in New Mexico. I believe that's the understanding. It's like I said, once again, it's a bit confusing. So, White Sands is someone commented on Twitter. White Sands is snow, which is also a reference to a place in New Mexico, which actually makes more sense. So White Sands is New Mexico. Black Mesa was in New Mexico. And episode 3 that was supposed to come out but never did was set in the Borealis, which is stranded in the Arctic. And I think it's primarily the fact that it's Project White Sands. It's set in New Mexico. It's made by Valve. White Sands seems to be a reference to New Mexico. Black Mesa was in New Mexico. This is a game made by Valve, so this could potentially be Half-Life 3 finally coming. And it's been 17 years, I believe, since Half-Life 2 Episode 2. Not like by date, not exact dates, but I'm pretty sure it was 2007. That episode 2 of Half-Life 2 came out, and that ended very much on a cliffhanger. And the only thing we've seen specifically since then, apart from Half-Life Alyx, which is supposed to take place between Half-Life 1 and Half-Life 2, at least I'm pretty sure that's correct. The only thing we've seen is that the Borealis shows up in Portal 2. There's like a hidden area in Portal 2 where the Borealis shows up, and you get a little bit of dialogue from Cave Johnson regarding the connection with Black Mesa. So, anyway, your thoughts?
I don't know how to approach this. Like it could be something. Unless it could be something, but on the other hand, it could be some sort of maybe small project that they're doing. I don't know what to expect here. I still believe, I feel so far that the only time Valve has ever counted to 3 was with Steam OS 3.0. That's the only time Valve has ever counted to 3. Like, not even on their episode games. They always did episode 2, Half-Life 2 episode 1, Half-Life 2 episode 2. They never even went to 3. Like 3 is just cursed for Valve, even more so than with Kingdom Hearts, because eventually Square learned how to count to 3. Took them some numbers, took them some added words and stuff, but they got to 3. But I don't think this could be it. I think there at some point was even, I can't remember if this was an interview or if it was some sort of document that was put out saying that from Gabe Newell saying that Half-Life 3, like the whole story had been written out, but they just never made the game for it. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. And granted, maybe this is something related to Half-Life. We don't know, but at the same time, what if it's just like some sort of side game? I'm not saying this is a side game, but like, what if it's something like Half-Life Alyx, where it's not an actual full-on game? Like, what if it's something like another technically side game?
Alyx technically is a full game. It's just in VR exclusively.
Yes. But as far as like it being a numbered title
Right.
or like a
Yeah.
I guess mainline would be a better word,
Mhm.
then like I don't it could be something else
Right.
entirely besides that. So I don't know. I mean, granted, we still also haven't heard anything about, or at least anything new about their was it their Deadlock game? We haven't heard anything about that.
Yeah, I
so
forgot about that.
like the fact that we also have this, granted, we don't know how long either have been in development for. So if one comes out before the other, we can't say because we know next to nothing. But if Deadlock does come out first, then who knows when Project White Sands will come out. And because I mean, even here on the listing on the page, it says like there's no information here, and we don't even know the name of the character. I mean, like all the other character names we know, but this one just says to be announced. So we don't know how far development is going on for the game. I mean, granted, it could be something where it's even just like an NDA where they can't disclose the name of the character.
Yeah.
But who knows? Like we know little to nothing. But I won't hold my breath for anything because history tells us that expecting something from Valve regarding Half-Life is like expecting free GPUs. Or expecting a game in the year of our Lord 2024 to not require upscaling.
Right. Well, to be fair, Nintendo doesn't require upscaling for their games usually.
That is true. That is true. Nintendo at least puts in that effort. It might be a bit of an uphill battle because of the hardware limitations, but they at least put in the effort.
Yeah. And I'm sure that in some cases they do use internal upscalers. I know that like Xenoblade Chronicles 3 uses an internal upscaler, but it actually works really well because it actually looks good in handheld mode, whereas Xenoblade 2 and Chronicles Definitive Edition did not look good in handheld mode. They looked bad. I mean, I think the first Chronicles Definitive Edition was a little better than Chronicles 2, but Chronicles 2 was horrendous, and Chronicles 1 was still really bad. So anyway, so regarding this, I'm looking at some of the comments on the Reddit thread. One thing, so regarding White Sands is a park in New Mexico, and of course, that's where Black Mesa was located, was in New Mexico. And furthermore, the idea that White Sands could also refer to snow, which is obviously a thing in Arctic regions, the Borealis, which is the main plot point of Half-Life 3, is in the Arctic regions. Or at least that's where it was. So it's very possible. We'll say it's possible that this is coming. But from a realistic standpoint, more likely than not, this is just going to be the meme situation, little Easter egg from SteamWorld Dig, where you see a line of people at a game store sitting outside, and it's literally skeletons waiting for Half-Life 3. There's a Half-Life 3 sign, and people died waiting for Half-Life 3. So that's probably what it's really going to be. But I do have a bit of hopium. Now, I will say, like, because of how many games I have to play, to me, it ultimately doesn't matter if this ever comes. But this is like the most convinced I've been so far of the possibility that this game is actually coming. And I will happily, without question, buy this day one if it comes. But obviously right now, all we have is a listing that may or may not actually refer to Half-Life 3. And until Valve confirms it, it's better to just assume there's nothing. And that this is something else completely. Now, the fact that this is made by Valve, the fact that it does just happen to have Project White Sands is a park in New Mexico. And New Mexico is, of course, where the Black Mesa incident happened. All of those points definitely seems like a Valve way to do things. But we'll have to wait and see what comes of this, if anything. Eventually we'll get something about this. We just have no idea what it is. For all we know, this could just be like, this is something they barely started, rather than it being something where they're actually like getting close to crossing the finish line. One thing I will say though is that if this comes, I think one of two things is going to happen. In fact, I think actually both things will probably happen. But I think that it will probably run best. Well, I should say, let me back up. It will come to PC, obviously. It will come to consoles. It will run on the Steam Deck, because Valve will optimize it, because they're good at optimizing games, unlike so many other developers. And because, of course, it's their hardware, so they want to optimize it. But I also think that they will use it as a launch title for the Steam Deck 2. Now, that's just assuming that it's even anywhere near close to being done. Which, you know, like I would guess probably Steam Deck 2 2026 maybe would be when we would see that. And of course for me, obviously whether or not I'd get a Steam Deck 2 would depend on whether or not they do an OLED screen, because if they do an OLED screen, I'm all for it. If they don't do an OLED screen, I'll wait, because I like my OLED and I don't want to make the same mistake of buying one in 2022 and then the next one the following year. I don't want to do that again. So, but there's another comment here. F it, I'm putting my clown makeup back on. Gaben, please. Oh man. It's like, you know, the great thing about being at this position in life is that I'm very much at a point where, like, it doesn't matter to me. I could never get another new game for the rest of my life, and I would still be set, because I have so many games. And there's still games that I would like to purchase. Still games I would like to play. Like, I'll never run out of games. I don't think that there's any way I could ever possibly run out of games, even if all I play is what I currently have. And if I still have access to all the games that exist that I don't have, that still adds literally hundreds, potentially thousands of games that I would enjoy playing. So, you know, if Half-Life 3 comes, fantastic. I'm all for it. I'm happily going to buy it. I'm happily going to play it. If it doesn't come, whatever. It's fine. I got enough to play. I don't have time to play all these games anyway.
Okay, I'm going to actually change my stance. I'm going to have a little bit of hope that this is actually real, because we did get a miracle before, and we got a miracle earlier this year where Metroid Prime 4 was announced. True. And we do have at least a release year now.
Yep.
So you know what? Maybe this is the year of miracles, and maybe we actually will get Half-Life 3. So I'll put in a small sliver of hope.
You know, one thing I do think would probably happen, and you know, once again, could be totally wrong. I think Half-Life 3 is going to be shadow dropped when it gets announced. I think it's just going to drop.
That would be
It's
insane.
just going to show up, and it is going to cause some serious mayhem on Steam.
Oh yeah,
because I mean, yes, of course. Obviously, there's a whole lot of people who have never played any Half-Life games, and they're not going to have any interest. And you know, but then there are some people who literally, because of how long this has been a meme, they'll buy it just because of that, even if they've never played a single Half-Life game. And like I've played, I technically haven't played through one, because one I played most of Black Mesa, because I played Black Mesa before they had completed the game, when they had done everything up until you get to Zen, which is like the last area of the original game. And so Black Mesa is a remake of the original Half-Life, and with some changes. but it's done in the Source engine, whereas the original Half-Life was a completely different engine. And I played Half-Life 2. I played Half-Life 2 Episode 1, Episode 2. I played Lost Coast, which was a little side, just single level that never made it into the Half-Life 2 game. And I played Half-Life... what are the two names of them? Like Blue Force or something, and Opposing Force and Blue something. Let me find it here. It's in my list. Completed Half-Life Blue Shift. That was the name of it. So I played all of those. And of course, you know, like I said, Half-Life 2 Episode 2 ended on a major cliffhanger. You know, it would be fantastic to see the story finally get its conclusion. And of course, knowing, number one, the fact that Valve is an expert developer, they're an expert at optimizing their games. They actually care enough to optimize their games. They're focused primarily on PC because that's their main market. They have probably more money than just about any other game platform in existence. That excites me from that standpoint, because also you have to keep in mind the big difference between where Valve was when they made Half-Life 2 Episode 1 and 2 versus where they are today. And just also the fact that they've proven themselves over and over the years to be like very consumer friendly. Like, they actually are probably the only company I can think of when it comes to like major game development platform and everything else where they've actually treated their customers well. Now, granted, they haven't made really any new games with the exception of Counter-Strike 2 in a really long time. It's like, okay, they have Counter-Strike 2, and then before that, the last game was probably Portal 2. And Portal 2 was like 2011 or 2012, something like that. It was a long time ago. But everything they've made has been quality. And their platform is, for good reason, the number one PC game marketplace. And then they made the Steam Deck and popularized PC handhelds that did exist before they made them, of course, but they made them more reasonably affordable and able to do a lot more, all while running on a Linux operating system instead of Windows. I have faith in Valve if they were to do this, that they would do it justice, they would do it well. And yes, some people will not be satisfied, but I think most people, especially those who are fans of the Half-Life series, will very much be pleased. And I'm not expecting like the moon. I'm not expecting it to be insane, like all sorts of triple A or quadruple A or anything like that. I'm just expecting it to be a solid game. And even if it largely plays very similar to Half-Life 2, that's all we really need. It doesn't even have to look better. Now, I do think it will look better because it's been a long time that technology's developed a lot. I'm pretty sure they have a new Source engine already, and they have for a long time. They've been working on for years and years and years. So it probably will look really good, but it doesn't absolutely have to, because of the fact that the gameplay is the main thing. Now, obviously, I think most people would not be satisfied if it looked like about as good as the old Half-Life games. But Source can go a lot farther if they push it. There are plenty of examples, like even, I think it was, I can't remember if it was just Titanfall 1, or if it was also Titanfall 2. I feel like there was some other really big game that used the Source engine. And it was not, I mean, it was still a number of years ago, but it was, they pushed the Source engine and they made a game that looked really good, still using the Source engine. So, anyway. I think that's everything I have to say.
Yeah. One thing that you mentioned, which I never even would have considered, but I think it's a great point, and I think it is possible is them actually bringing Half-Life 3 to consoles. And I mean, it makes sense. It's another stream of revenue for them.
Right.
And I mean, considering the fact that they did put the other Half-Life games on console, but originally on the PS3 and Xbox 360, and more recently with the Switch, I definitely see them doing this again for that. And I mean, granted, you know, some people would say, haha, look at you PC gamers, you don't get to have any exclusives. We took your exclusives, but we don't care. Like, if you get to play the game,
it's like,
that's great.
Hey, we want you to play these games. Now, I wish that the Half-Life games would make their way over to consoles, because yes, of course, yes, you have Half-Life 1 like back on the original Xbox. You have Half-Life 2 on PS3 and 360, but those aren't they might be playable on Xbox consoles because of backwards compatibility, but like PlayStation, you can't play them. And I don't think they ever brought those collections over, but of course, you know, you have Portal 1 and 2 on the Switch now. Run flawlessly. They look great. I mean, they're perfect ports. That's the reality. Is they're perfect ports. Other than the fact that they don't have a physical version, which is stupid because I would happily buy it. Gabe, give me physical versions of those games and I will buy them. I will double dip. Technically, it's triple dip since I already own them on PC. But I will buy them happily. And you do that with Half-Life, put all of the games on a cartridge, just leave them as is. You don't even have to do the ray tracing mod or anything like that for Half-Life 1. Or, although I think it would be pretty cool to do the 20th anniversary version of that. I think that would be very sweet, and I would like to do that. But the point is put those games elsewhere. People will buy them. Put those games out there, release Half-Life 3, and then you get an influx of new people wanting to check out these old games. Even if they don't play them, even if they just go straight to Half-Life 3. Anyway, I'm done. I'm actually done this time. All right,
Same here.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, let's see here. I think that's everything story-wise. So, recommendations and dissuasions.
All right. So, my recommendations are pretty much going to actually be tips for Kingdom Hearts. Primarily if you are trying to do the speedrun / no equipment change run, which in general people recommend doing as a combo, so that we can get both of them out of the way at the same time. So I guess the first tip is, while people say to skip Olympus Coliseum because to save time, I would say go to Olympus the first time just so you can get Thunder, but wait and come back until after you're at the end of the game or near the end of the game. Come back just so you can go to the Hercules Cup and you can skip all the other cups and not have to worry about doing that. You can just jump right into that one so you can get the Yellow Trinity ability, so that way you can go to the hold in the pirate ship in Neverland, so that we can actually upgrade your arrow magic, because that will make a huge difference with the final boss. And even Chernobog, because Chernobog, if I had that ability, it would have made things a whole lot better than how things went before. So definitely do that. Another thing I'll say is, if you are speedrunning through the game and you just skip pretty much every enemy up to the final point of the game, and you should have plenty of time, so if you need to, go ahead and do some grinding. And in fact, I would also say go to Olympus, because that is a good way to do some grinding with the later cups, so that we can get more XP without having to worry about running back and forth to areas to get enemies to respawn, because you're just constantly facing enemies. So that is a good way to help level up. And then my one last tip I would say for fighting Ansem is, whenever he does the submit, the submit attack where he possesses you with his guardian, it's easy to try to run away, or try to use your super glide. But the best thing to do is to actually go towards him, and then right before the guardian actually swings downward, then do a dodge roll away. That's the safest thing I've found out to avoid actually being hit and having to worry about being possessed and dealing with all that. So those are my tips for doing the speed run / no equipment change run.
Okay. All right. Well, my recommendation, I actually have two of them. One of them is connected to one you've given 2 or 3 times previously, and that is, if you struggle to fall asleep at night, like you're just tossing and turning, you can't get to sleep, one reason or another. I mean, unless it's entirely just a mental thing, which sometimes it is, I find typically drinking some water will help, because usually I find that if I'm having a hard time getting to sleep, it's probably I'm a little dehydrated, and if I drink some water, usually I fall asleep pretty quickly. Yes, I'll still end up having to wake up to pee during the night, but it's worth it to just be able to fall asleep more quickly, because otherwise sometimes, like, I've had times where I'm up an hour past when I lay down because I just can't fall asleep. And in just about every situation, as soon as I have had some water, I'm able to fall asleep, and then I sleep through the rest of the night. So but on a different recommendation, play Dark Souls Remastered, especially on the Steam Deck. If you have one, that is a great place to play it. It doesn't require a lot in terms of specs. Of course, you can play it on PC in general. And I would say, if you don't have a Steam Deck, if you don't have a PC, and your only real option, I mean, you can play it on Switch. It is playable there. Yes, it's 30 frames per second, and depending on your sensitivity, which typically people who play it mostly on console aren't that sensitive to it, it still shouldn't matter too much. It's still playable. As playable as 30 FPS can be, and it's worth it. I'm having a good time with it. I'm glad I'm back into it. I'm sure there will be times where I'll get frustrated, but in general, I think I've just kind of gone back into it with the right attitude. And of course, following that checklist has been super helpful. Just getting me to, pick up different things that I wouldn't pick up otherwise, and prepare myself better for various fights that I go into. So I'm sticking with it for now. And that's what I got for recommendations. So nice. Dissuasions.
My dissuasion is going to be, do not play Kingdom Hearts offline if you are trying to get an achievement, or if you're in an area that is going to unlock an achievement, because based on what happened with me, it did not work. And you will have to either go through what you did all over again, or you just might not get it at all. I mean, if you're going to do something where, say, you're just doing some grinding or you're just exploring, that's probably completely fine. But if you're actually going to be doing something like facing a boss, or maybe getting some sort of other collectibles that would unlock the achievement, just wait until you're connected back to the internet, because otherwise you will most likely not get that achievement.
All right. Well, my dissuasion is, do not try running a game on PC while you have another system-intensive process going. Because you will be disappointed at your performance. Even with that, I've actually been thinking about the next time I do a 24-hour stream, I might do a dual PC setup, because I found that there is a way to do it that seems to be pretty easy. I haven't tested it out yet. I'm probably, in the coming days, going to test out, first seeing what would happen if I just grabbed my other desktop and used that as my streaming PC, because that might work. I mean, graphics card, it doesn't have the best graphics card. It's just a 980. I think it's a 980 Ti. It might just be a 980. But it has a good amount of RAM, and processor isn't great. But if all it's doing is just sending the signal over the internet, then it should be fine. So, but yeah. Anyway, don't try running a game on PC while you have another system-intensive process going. All right. Where can people find you?
They can find me on my channel, I am Xeracon. That's IAMXERACON. So youtube.com/@IamXeracon. similar to last week, nothing new as of yet, but as soon as I get my internet back up and running, I will definitely try to put out a video ASAP.
Sounds good. All right, well, you can find me on YouTube at the Frozen Gamer 87. This past Monday, I put out a comparison for the Steam Deck OLED versus the Switch OLED with Borderlands 3. That one's actually doing pretty well, which is great. I figured that probably since it was newer than 2 and the pre-sequel that it would do a lot better, and it definitely has, because I think 2 is just barely over 1,000 views after like 3 months since I put it out, and pre-sequel has like less than 500 views. So, but this one's already, the last I checked, it was around 1.5 thousand views, something like that. So yeah, it's doing pretty well, which is good. Next week, I'm going to be putting up a comparison for The Outer Worlds. And also, I should have a product review going up for the Unitech multifunction docking station. It's a dock station that's supposed to work for both the Switch and the Steam Deck. And so I'm planning to get that up sooner rather than later. I might even have it up as early as this Friday. It kind of just depends on how much time I have to edit it tomorrow, which is Thursday as of the time of recording. If so, then that will probably go up on Friday as well on my Frozen Gamer channel. And then after that, I also, next Friday will be my next Dads and Gaming interview, as I did get a chance to record that over the weekend, so that one will be going up on Friday the 16th. And otherwise, I think that's it for that channel. Then I also have a YouTube cooking channel, Not Authentic But Delicious. That's youtube.com/@NABDcooking. I did not have a recipe go up this week because timing didn't work out for me to get anything recorded or edited, so there isn't anything this week. But next week I'm going to have my Huevos Rancheros pizza recipe going up, so that should be next Wednesday around 7 a.m. Central Time. That's typically when my recipes are going up. And then I think that's it for that. I'm not sure if I'll have recipes going up right after that or not. I'm hoping to get a number of them recorded soon, but I am going to be taking breaks for both channels for probably a couple of weeks after the stuff that goes up next week, because my younger sister is going to be coming out to visit along with her daughters, and so unfortunately her husband can't come out, but they are going to be out here staying with us, so I want to be able to have more time to spend with them and not have to worry so much about video production. So I'll be taking a little bit of time off of that, and then hopefully during that time I'll also be able to record some more recipes so that I can have a few more lined up ready to edit and get up, because I have at least a few different things that I'm definitely going to be doing in the near future. It's just a matter of finding the time to get everything done. So, and then finally, we have, of course, if you are listening to the audio-only version of the Orange Box podcast, you can find it anywhere on any podcast platform, or at least all the major ones. It's on Spotify, it's on YouTube Music, it's on Apple Music, it's on iHeartRadio, it's on Deezer, it's on Amazon Music. It's basically all over the place. So you can find it any of those locations. If you are interested in seeing a little bit more, like seeing our mugs, whether you like the way we look or not, seeing some gameplay clips of games we've been playing, sometimes other clips related to stuff in the news or new trailers and things like that, and you just kind of want to get more of commentary to go along with the videos that you're watching, you can find us on YouTube at the Orange Box Podcast. And of course, you can contact us very easily by either commenting on our YouTube videos, or you can contact us through email, which is theorangeboxpodcast@gmail.com. You can also contact us on Twitter or X at theorangeboxpod. And you can, write us about anything. If you have any questions for us, if you have comments, if you want to tell us that we're ugly, tell me that I'm fat, feel free to put anything out there. And if nobody says anything, it's fine. We'll still talk for 2.5 hours every week, because this is how we catch up week to week, and it's just a good outlet. So that's all I got, I believe. Any final thoughts? Last chance.
No, sir.
All right. Well, I am the Frozen Gamer 87. That is I am Zeracon. We are the Orange Box Podcast. And until next time, I can't talk. Don't shoot a stormtrooper in the head if you can't kill him. Orange Box Podcast, out.